like 2.5 years ago, whenever that might be, in the summer, I got COVID. Didn't get it badly, particularly, but never recovered. And I, for the first 6 months, kept thinking, oh, this is going to go away. And I had periods where I was sort of okay, and then would go for a long walk, and then would have a massive crash, and it was just like, shit, I'm just not getting better. And then I thought, I need some help. I can't do this on my own. I think for me, the COVID was the final stop. I recognize now, I know so much more about chronic fatigue. I think I'd had it for about 15 years prior to COVID. But how that presented itself to me was, I thought I just didn't have an immune system. I used to just get sickness after sickness, and I'd been going to the doctor on and off for years, and they'd just say things like, you underestimate how hard it is to bring kids up on your own, because I was a single mom with 2 kids. But I used to think, but I'm absolutely totally fine, other than having to fight this sort of what I thought was my immune system wasn't working. So I got diagnosed as intermittent chronic fatigue.
Welcome everyone to another CFS Health Recovery success story. We are here with Tori from UK. Is that right, Tori?
Yeah.
Welcome. Thanks for coming on to share your recovery story with us. We worked together a fair few years ago, and the last couple of years, and you've gone from a pretty hard situation, which I'm sure many people who are watching this are going through right now, and you're coming out the other end. And you've been coming out the other end, and you're back living life and doing some amazing things. So I'd love to, kind of start with the beginning, with where you're at initially, before we even met. What was going on in Tori's life? Give us a little bit of a background, 2-minute background story.
Okay. So yeah, back like 2.5 years ago, whenever that might be, in the summer, I got COVID. Didn't get it badly, particularly, but never recovered. I, for the first 6 months, kept thinking, oh, this is going to go away. And I had periods where I was sort of okay, and then would go for a long walk, and then would have a massive crash, and it was just like, shit, I'm just not getting better. And then I stumbled across you on, like many people do, on social media somehow. And I thought, I need some help. I can't do this on my own. I think for me, the COVID was the final stop. I recognize now, I know so much more about chronic fatigue. I think I'd had it for about 15 years prior to COVID.
Wow.
But how that presented itself to me was, I thought I just didn't have an immune system. I used to just get sickness after sickness. And I'd been going to the doctor on and off for years, and they'd just say things like, you underestimate how hard it is to bring kids up on your own, because I was a single mom with 2 kids. But I used to think, but I'm absolutely totally fine, other than having to fight this sort of what I thought was my immune system wasn't working. So I got diagnosed as intermittent chronic fatigue, which I'm not actually entirely sure that even exists now. I know.
Yeah.
So for me, I can now look back and think, right, okay, the COVID was a stop. And it was the virus that I needed for me to look at my life. At the time, it was horrible. And my main symptom was that it felt like my legs just wouldn't work. I could, to walk literally 100 yards, I was like having to focus on it. So anyway, wasn't getting better. I found you guys. And to start with, I felt like, oh, thank God I'm somewhere where everyone understands what I'm on about. However, I guess it was quite scary, because I realized that we were, what you teach is baseline, and then finding your baseline and then building gradually, slowly. But my baseline was way lower than I thought. So
before you even started working with us, like, had you tried lots of things? Like, I know you're in the UK, so it was pretty fresh back then. Was there like support? Did you try lots of different stuff? Really?
I went to the doctor, and because my heartbeat had gone a bit strange. So I had like tests for that just to check my heart was okay. But because COVID hadn't gone to my lungs, thankfully, I wasn't sort of severe enough to go to a long COVID clinic.
Right.
So they did a blood test, everything came back normal. And to be honest, I think because my belief in doctors and the medical system in this country anyway, I don't have much faith. I'd been going to the doctors for years, and they can never seem to help me with anything. So I think I probably thought, shit, this is long COVID. It's another thing I'm going to have to try and deal with on my own, probably. So we didn't go and see specialist after specialist, no, because I'd already been doing it for years.
And so it was a timing thing that we must have popped up in your world pretty soon
I
after
think
that.
it was probably about 6 months into my journey of trying to recover from long COVID. And I thought, yeah, right, I'm going to do this. And it's been a lifesaver. I mean, it hasn't felt like it a lot of the time, but actually, being in the group, being in the program, connecting with people that were going through the same thing was massive. Because for me, I think one of my biggest struggles was this thing of nobody else understanding. So like kind of feeling like I had to if I did see people, over explaining, which then expels a huge amount of energy and
it's exhausting. Yeah.
It's exhausting, and kind of feeling like nobody really, totally understandably so, they don't get what you're going through. Because if you haven't been through something, you don't get it. It's a weird thing. And also sometimes, some days I'd look fine. And then you get the thing where people say, oh, you look great. It's like, thank you. And then a few days later, you're kind of not feeling fine at all. So it's a really difficult thing, I think, to explain to people. So I was so relieved to find a group that just got it. And I think really my friendships and my connections with people for the last 2.5 years have mainly been through the people that I met on your program. I've obviously maintained my friendships, but they're the people that I felt safe with.
Yeah. Safety is a big thing.
I mean,
and safety is a big thing in recovery. I'd love to talk about like what were the biggest challenges? I know you mentioned before off air, like you want to speak to perfectionism because, as you know, so many people struggle with that, and we will definitely talk about that today because I think it's such an important topic. But what were like 3 of the main problems for you that when you enrolled, like what were the bottlenecks that were kind of blocking in the road of recovery? Do you remember at the start?
Acceptance. I think that took me a long time to accept that I was properly kind of sick. I kept sort of thinking, oh yeah, no, but I sort of knew I was feeling really awful, but I couldn't quite accept that I needed to really slow down. So I think for the first, even possibly year, to be fair, longer, to accept where I was and the fact that I could never really wrap my head around the fact that I couldn't do a lot. So there was not accepting my situation, huge amount of grief around how my life was looking and what I was missing out on. Perfectionism, yes. I never thought I was a perfectionist until I was on this journey, and I was like, yeah, I think, maybe I mean, I know I have a real achiever part of my personality, but I think it then sort of crosses over in perfectionism, doesn't it? So I think I was maybe comparing myself with other people on the program and then looking at how they might be doing and beating myself up because I maybe was perceiving myself to not be doing it perfectly or getting things wrong or not being very nice to myself, to be honest.
Yeah, it's a real common theme that happens at the start of most people's journey. The acceptance piece, the grief piece. They're big. They're 2 big ones. They're quite heavy. Like it's not. And this is the thing. And I loved what you said at the start. Like your life is so much better now. And it was a lifesaver, but you also said, but sometimes it wasn't easy. And I think that's the cue there is like, there's no such thing as a quick fix or an overnight kind of cure. And the reason for that, I think, is a lot of these things take time. Like the acceptance piece for you took an entire year almost, basically. And it wasn't just like an overnight switch. It was a gradual understanding of self and reality and past and present and future and cognition and thinking. And energy allocation, where you're spending that energy. Same thing with grief. Like it's such a big, heavy thing to let go of, and it's one of those things that you can't just, come to somebody. Like imagine if you come to me and you say to me, oh yeah, it's grief, Toby. And I say, all right, cool. 3, 2, 1, the grief's gone. It just doesn't work. No, it doesn't.
No. It was quite a long process, I think. And those emotions are quite big emotions, as you say, and they don't just go. So yeah, it took a long time. And I mean, even probably last year, I think when you're sitting in it and you're recognizing that it's not helpful to focus on symptoms, that is not helpful. However, it's really difficult not to do it. So then I sort of would get to a place where I sort of slightly beating myself up because I'm thinking about my symptoms, and I recognize that I need to be focusing on what I can do. But all of this takes time. All of this, it's practice. It's finding things you can do. For me, when I was this time last, it's all such a blur, all the dates, but let's say 18 months ago, I was in a really bad place. And I started doing some art. I was doing puzzle after puzzle after puzzle, and I was thinking, I quite like puzzles, but you
were over
sure I could do puzzles.
Yeah.
So I got a pen and paper, and I started sketching, and then I thought, oh, I used to do this, and I used to love this. I haven't done it since I did A-level art, and I haven't really done any art. And then I just started incorporating colour, and I just got such joy from doing my little drawings that I do. That was great. That gave me a real lift. I'm trying to think what else sort of helped me when I was really in that dark. It was just keep going. It was literally thinking of what you say in to us about little by little becomes a lot and all of that. And I had all these little quotes around me. Like, I've got this one here, actually. It's not what you do, it's how you do it.
Yeah.
And all these little
I've got all these quote cards.
Yeah, I religiously picked out a card every day.
Yeah.
Religiously.
There's so many good ones. So basically, if you're a mentor member, you basically get sent a bunch of things over time. But this is one of the packs that you get, and it's I think it's 62 quote cards, and they're all from the program. They're all from video trainings, and what you resist persists. It's nice to be nice, but it's not nice to be a doormat, which is about setting boundaries and not being.
That definitely was me.
Not being walked over. I think this one's perfect, really, which is acceptance isn't resignation. I think that's one big thing that you went through. You had to go through that realization that acceptance isn't giving up. Acceptance isn't failure. Acceptance doesn't mean that you're going to stay where you're at forever. It's just accepting your current reality so you can change it.
Yeah, and I think belief as well. Sort of keeping that belief that your life will expand at some point, and. Yeah, and acceptance isn't resignation, although sometimes it felt like it. So yeah, the acceptance piece was huge, and I think it took me a long time that. And now looking back, I recognise that it's so easy, isn't it, to look back and think, oh, if I'd have done it like that, and if I just, I could have maybe saved myself a year, but it was my journey, and we was learning the whole time. Recovery
is a journey. I think it's like, it sounds so hard to believe, but I believe everything is perfect, You have to go through those lulls. You have to go through the crap. You had to go through the times where you felt like you wanted to give up, or you stopped doing what was working because, it helps you get back on track. Like, you kind of have to have context to then have the content to then change the process. And, it's hard, but, the amount of people that I've met over the last 15 years now who at the time are just like, this is the worst thing in my life. Like, this is terrible. And then 5 years later, they come back and they go, "Oh my God, it was the best thing that ever happened to me. I'm a different person. I'm kinder, I'm happier, I'm healthier, I'm stronger. I've got better values. I look after myself, and change of relationships, trajectory of career, change of hobbies, like all these things. It's an evolution of self, and it's a real journey. I liken it to a spiritual journey. One of the things that people don't talk about enough in the chronic fatigue syndrome space is, the spiritual process that you go through as a human being to let go of your old self and build a new self is huge, and that has to be factored in. That is a process in and of itself. Let's talk about perfectionism. When you enrolled in the mentorship, what happened? Like, you mentioned before, like it was a real big thing. Why do you think it kind of presented itself, or where did it come from? And let's talk about kind of some things on how to let go of perfectionism, because it's a big deal.
Where did it come from? I think I've always been like it.
Yeah.
And I didn't realize that at the time, but I think now looking back, I realized that I was trying to get my recovery journey to be perfect, and if things weren't going according to plan, and I was having a bad day, I would really nosedive emotionally quite quickly, which again is all part of my journey.
Yep.
Was a real, I'm going off on a tangent a little bit now, But with everything I've learned through Gemma, I realise for years probably when she says things like emotions are energy in motion. And if you keep them pushed down, then it can cause dis-ease.
Yeah.
And I think for years I've just been like pushing down, down, down and trying to kind of put this perfect like front on type of thing. And I feel that the amount of crying and release that I've done over the last 2 years kind of needed to come out. And consequently, I've made space. This is how I feel. Made space in myself for real joy, which I don't think I really had. So even though at the time it felt shit every time, and actually even 2 weeks ago I had a little bit of a wobble and I found myself nosediving and getting really upset. So it's not totally gone away, but it's created space for a real happiness that I didn't ever have before. And I think maybe, didn't know that ties in with perfectionism, but I think maybe keeping a sort of front on
like a mask.
Everything was, and keeping going and being strong and all of that was me before. Yeah, a definite mask.
A certain identity, protection.
And I'm much more able these days. Something happened last week which was really upsetting. And instead of, it's to do with my son, and I went into being strong mum, which I want to be there for him. But I really recognised that I needed to get the grief and the sadness out myself.
Wow.
So I came up to my space here, which is my office, and put on an emotional release thing and just bawled.
Wow.
And then was like, right, now I can crack on. I never would have done that before.
Wow.
So that's something I've really learned from Gemma.
Yeah, Gemma. Shout out to Gemma, who's our mindset coach at CFS Health. She helps. It's a lesson session on this stuff.
So I guess, perfectionism, I always wanted to be a perfect mum. I still want to be a really good mum.
Yeah.
But I recognise now that I also have stuff that I need to feel, release, and then I'm more able to be a good mum. Whereas before, in the past, I would have shoved that down and tried to be perfect. That makes sense.
Well, I just already like the language you're already using. You've gone from, I wanted to be a perfect mum, and now I still want to be a good mum. So, like even your language is way healthier and, appropriate. Kids, there's no such thing as a perfect mum, right? Like that's a freaking hard achievement to create. I mean, I feel like every mum's doing their perfectly best, acts of service all the time. But, you said it perfectly. I want to be a great mum. Of course you still do, and you can be, but it doesn't mean you have to be perfect. It's so interesting. What were some patterns that you saw inside the mentorship when the perfectionism would sneak up? Was it like when you were having like hard days, or when someone did big wins or posted a success? Right? Okay.
When someone had done a really big win, I was straight away like really happy for them. And it sounds horrible because I was really happy for them, but I'm like, how come I'm not doing that?
Yeah.
I did slightly compare myself to others. And also, probably every time I felt, I was fine when I thought I was doing well. And then if I felt I was dipping or not doing so great, I would continually look at, what I'd done wrong, or rather than just sort of thinking, now I'm able to think, okay, actually last week, you know what, you did do quite a lot, this, that and the other, chill, that's fine, you'll have a quiet day. I would get really caught up in the whole story of what I'd done or hadn't done, and sort of really micromanaging everything. But I do think that it is really difficult when you are feeling so horrible and you're kind of feeling really symptomy all the time. It is really difficult. I found it really difficult not to kind of beat myself up about it.
Yeah, it takes a shift. It really takes a hard committed shift to not focus on the crap and the worries and the things that you can't do and the things that someone else is doing that you're not doing. It takes a real certain shift and commitment to just focus on where do you want to go? Getting closer. Where do you want to go?
Oh, your expression about staying in your own lane, I found that quite hard sometimes. And I had to remind myself, Tori, you're in your own lane. But I think what I want to say to people is, I think my recovery was really messy and
every
Still my
single
own
success
way.
person's was though. That's the craziest thing. Like
Yeah.
people don't
But
realize.
I still am healing and I am getting better. So I
Exactly.
just really want to say to people, if they can try not to beat themselves up
Mm.
about what they might think they're getting wrong and just believe that it will shift. You just got to keep going.
Yeah. We talked about, one of the hardest things is physiological adaptation doesn't happen for the first short period of time. So it takes 6 to 8 weeks for a healthy person to see physiological adaptation in the body after training. And so you can imagine someone who's recovering from chronic fatigue syndrome, it's going to be a lot slower than that. And so, typically what happens after the first 3 months, you get really disheartened. You go, "It's not working. Why isn't it working? Why is this person getting better?" And they're like 2 years down the track or a year down the track, and they've gone through the start of what you're going through now kind of feeling, but you don't realize that. And it's after that first 3 months or 6 months where it feels tough and you just keep going and you keep doing everything consistently and you're actually committed and implementing. Because that's the other thing. It's like sometimes you can think you're doing everything right and you're kind of not. And I'm not saying this is you, but it's an experience that I often see with a lot of people where they're like, yeah, I'm doing my baseline. And then they haven't. They've been like going way beyond and pushing themselves and doing things that are way inappropriate for their capacity. And they're wondering why they're not getting anywhere because they haven't been committed to it for long enough. And, after that period of time, exactly what you said, most people it's like 9 months, sometimes 6, sometimes a little bit less, sometimes more, of like when it finally kind of starts to click. It's almost like starting a new car kind of feeling. Like it just like, all right, it just works. It's not like starting an old car where you have to turn the key 5 times and it works for a second and it doesn't work for a second. It's like something clicks in the motor and it's like, okay, this is actually working. Like you can see physiological change, maybe in your face, in your complexion. I know that happened with you. Maybe it's cognitive capacity starts to increase, socializing improves. Like what were some of the cues for you to actually realize that, no, I am actually progressing?
So definitely the cognitive. And actually, I mean, I would say I'm really going up to a different sort of level now over the last sort of couple of months. I found it really tiring being with people and chatting. But then what I realized is that I've always been the chatty one. And so I was trying to be with people, but I kept having to remind myself I could be with people, but actually just listen, Tori. You don't have to talk and fill the space all the time. That's exhausting. So, and that's still ongoing, to be fair.
Well, that's a personality thing more than anything else. It's like, no, that's a huge one that I think a lot of people talk about. Actually, I saw that in our chats the other day. Someone was talking about, I find it so draining being around people, and I used to be real extrovert, but now I just don't really enjoy it. But then she was saying how she was getting a lot of significance from being that person, always chatting and filling up space, but now that's empty for her. She doesn't need that significance anymore, and so she's it's changing. So that's interesting.
Yeah, so that was something that I definitely became aware of, like my interaction with people, and something that I might have to work on moving forward.
Well, what were some of the things that you noticed as you started to progress? Like like you could see, like, oh, okay, it is working, even though you felt like it wasn't. Like it was messy, and it was just like, how did you snap out of it? Did you start writing down your wins? Were you patting yourself on the back more?
Yeah, I always wrote down my wins. It became easier, I guess, when I started to feel like I could do a bit more. Then it didn't feel so depressing, if you know what I mean. So I could start. I started to, I could go and see a few friends more, or like a big thing for me actually was even like, going to do the supermarket shop. I haven't done that for years. So all those little things people take for granted.
Yeah.
Going to do the shop and then walking. I'm still building on my strength. I'm not the best at it. This is where my perfectionism, or not that. What would I say when you say consistency over intensity?
Oh yeah.
I'm rubbish at that.
Well, we need to work on your consistency, but strength and stamina and fitness is a lifelong thing, and this is what people often forget. It's like healthy people are having the same problem. Like, right, I would consider, I'd put you in that basket right now. Like you're a healthy person with trouble with consistency. Like
I'm trying to look at myself as a kind of unfit athlete rather than thinking how fit I was before I got poorly, which I was very fit. I was doing.
I love that idea.
So I'm trying to, in my head, just build, but this is where my achiever bit comes in, and that I'm like, oh, surely I just don't have to do 6 of something. Maybe I can do 12 today. I'm really, I'm not the consistent with the strength. So I do recognize that is me. I need to build slowly with that one. But I think just being able to do more in life, and I still, and listen to my body. You see, what I'm trying to say is when I was trying to listen to my body, when I felt so horrible, that felt really overwhelming, and oh my God, I just feel shit. But then as I started to feel better and build strength, then I now find it much easier. So for example, last week I went to stay with some friends in Herefordshire, which is a beautiful part of the world here. And I got on the train, had a rucksack. I thought that would be sensible. Actually, the rucksack was bloody heavy. But anyway, I did like a 4.5-hour train trip, went off to see my friends, had 5 days for them, then got the train back. And then last week, just had quite a busy week. And I'm helping my ex-husband with his lambing. He's a farmer. So I went to help at the lambing. So I'm doing a lot more. However, I really enjoy it. So, and actually it's something, because I'm not working yet. It is nice to be Toby, but there's method to madness in that I want to be able to go and do something physical. Not too much, because a lot of it's feeding lambs and nice stuff, but picking lambs up, treading over the hurdles, getting buckets of water, bits like that. But I'm only doing like an hour and a half. So I just wanted to have something that I could go and do it's almost like volunteering work.
Yeah, of course.
And, he's going to rely on me in the afternoon. So I'm doing things like that. However, I am much more aware of my body. So for example, yesterday I recognized I had a few little things that I recognize as symptoms that I need to listen to. And I had a quiet day. So, but I didn't have like a meltdown about it. It was like, you've done a lot, you've been away.
Would you call these symptoms, or would you just call this normal life tiredness symptoms? Because it sounds like that's kind of what you're doing.
No, because I do tend to, sometimes I'll get like, it feels like my glands are going up, and it's not a big deal. So maybe I wouldn't call it symptoms, but it feels different to just feeling tired. And it was not a problem, and I'm absolutely fine today. It was just, I recognized that yesterday I needed to, I still went for a walk in the morning, but then I made sure I had a really chill afternoon. So I am much more aware of what my body's sort of feeling. Whereas before I wouldn't even really have, before getting sick, I would have just run around like a headless chicken doing a million things anyway. And then at the beginning of my journey, it just felt really consumed by symptoms and feeling shit all the time. But I found it much easier as I started to kind of feel the difference in my body. You know what I mean?
Body wisdom.
So body wisdom. Yeah.
Tell me, what were the 3 biggest wins that you've had over the last couple of years? I know one of them was going to Spain with a friend. That was a huge milestone, flying overseas, catching up with one of your best friends. I remember you posting a photo of you. I think it was in a... Yeah.
Oh, and in the airport, but also in a restaurant with her. Yeah.
That's right, the restaurant.
Right. I did 2 pictures. Yeah, I'm very happily with my family, but I love doing things on my own as well. So that was really exciting to be able to get on the plane and chat to different people at the airport. I love it.
It's the best. Yeah.
Yeah. And actually going on the train last week to stay with my friends for 5 days, that was also really great, because I recognized that I have spent a lot of time at home in this environment. I'm feeling quite safe around my partner. And, so actually to spend, the friends that I went to stay with haven't been particularly involved in my journey at all. So that was a big one. It was lovely. What else have I done? I mean, done lots of things. I mean, those are the 2 things that I've done away from home. Apart from that, they've all been sort of smaller wins, like, going for longer walks, and I'm still not working yet. That's something that's developing. I'm a trained cat therapist, but I'm not necessarily sure how that's going to look moving forward. I'm training to be a therapeutic coach, so that's more to do with health.
So you're thinking of changing careers kind of thing?
yeah, I'm not quite sure. At the moment, I would like to be a therapist, but working mainly with people that have been through this sort of condition.
Amazing.
But I don't really know how that's going to look just yet, and how to sell myself. Yeah, it's going to work its way out.
For sure.
So yeah, and I think one of my biggest wins really is a personal win to me is that one of the themes that ran through the whole of my recovery was I suddenly realized, Tori, where are your boundaries? I used to talk about boundaries a lot actually when I used to go onto your call or Gemma's call.
That's right.
It's quite often. Even if I didn't think it was to do with boundaries and the question was something separate, always came back to boundaries. So I think I had to learn to implement boundaries with my family, with my friends, and it felt really uncomfortable to start with because I always felt like I was being horrible. And just...
How did you deal with that? Because that's hard. Like when you first set boundaries, particularly when you first start doing it back in the day, it's really scary. And I know a lot of members right now feel so petrified to say, no, thank you.
Well, the only reason I laughed was because when you said, how did you deal with it? I was laughing because I was like, not well.
Good. This is real. And this is it. And Gemma says it too. She said, it's like going to the gym. It's a muscle. And initially it's going to feel freaking hard and not going to be easy, challenging.
Came out all wrong. Yeah. But the more I've sort of done it, and I'm a work in progress,
It's a building muscle, right?
I mean, crikey, yeah. And it's difficult. I've got my 2 children, but my partner's got 5 kids. So between us, we've got 7 kids. It's
wow.
And a lot of the time I used to think, oh, bloody hell, I just need to be on a desert island on my own to get this healing thing right. But that's not life.
Nope.
So, and I think it's just about recognizing for me that I am important too. And I can't just go around. No one's expecting me to put them first. It's me. I've just always done that. And so it was just trying to kind of slowly think about what I needed, really recognize that I was not going to get very far if I was not thinking about myself and putting everyone else in front of me. And that took quite some time actually to realize that actually, come on, if you want to heal and you want to get better, you've got to do some of this work. So that was with my family, really, just kind of just being more recognizing that I had a big role in the house, really. And it was important for me to sort of speak up if I wanted to get better.
Why was that important to you? Why was that important to you? If you needed to, if you wanted to get better, you had to speak up. What did that mean? That powerful.
Well, it meant that then I wasn't going to fester all this kind of resentment, like annoyance at the fact that they were stopping me getting better. Because probably I was I was feeling like cheesed off that like I was still in it. So in order for me to get to victor rather than being a victim, I had to address boundaries and how I was and what I needed for people to do in the house, which I still do.
Yeah.
But it needed to start, I'd say. So, I think probably I was just sort of thinking, oh God, got 7 children and there's so much to do and no one clears up and,
no,
all of that.
Not going to happen. Yeah.
And yeah, so if I was going to stay that way, I wasn't really going to get very far.
No.
My partner probably listened to this and laugh. I think she still moans now, but it's different. I had an experience the other day actually where I was doing the washing up and I started to feel like that. I started to feel like, oh, for God's sake, why doesn't anyone clear up? And I stopped myself and I was like, Tori, you have choice. You have choice. You can either go upstairs and ask them to come down and clear it up, or you can get on with it and not mind, kind of thing, because it wasn't actually that much and I was just being...
a big deal. Yeah.
And I thought, okay, the choice is actually she needs to do her revision. I'm just going to crack on with it. And as soon as I realised that I had choice, I felt so much better about it, if you know what I mean.
I do. That's why CFS Health stands for Choice, Freedom, Success.
Yeah, there you are. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think even though it doesn't feel like a win, I felt like the question is, what are your wins? And I'm just sort of feeling on the spot because I'm thinking, shit, what are my wins? I feel like I've had lots of personal wins.
Like personal growth.
Yeah.
The humans.
So for me, even though, last summer I went to Madrid and then I've just been to Herefordshire, But even the fact that I'm able to help my ex-husband with the lambing at the moment, and in June I'm flying to California to stay with a friend who's just had a baby for a month, and then I'm starting my next level of my therapeutic coaching in July, and I see myself going back to work somehow at some stage.
Yeah, I feel like you're in a crossroads right now. You're
kind of at a crossroads.
Not even crossroads. You're in a transition period in life. That's what it is. Yeah. It's good. It's exciting.
Before I would have been really freaking out, going, "Oh God, what am I going to do, and how is it going to look?" But I've also taken that from you, which is just kind of chill. It'll all sort itself out. You just got to follow what you. I think for me, straight counselling feels a bit heavy.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking that it's got to be how I'm feeling like it needs to feel.
Well, your life is different now. So you're a different person. So you've got something different to offer. Yeah.
Yeah.
Exciting.
Yeah.
Thank you for your time. I got 2 questions to finish up. One, what would you say to anyone today who's watching this and listening to this, just like any word of wisdom, just anything off the top of your mind or heart that you just would like to share to them today?
Suppose reiterate, you can get there, you will get there, even if you don't think you're doing it perfectly, even if you think it feels like an absolute car crash at the moment. Keep going. If you're not part of the mentorship, then, I recognize it's finances, obviously. If you can't afford it, then just listen to Toby and all the stuff he does for free.
Podcasts and all that kind of stuff.
I would really give it a go, because I think it was just a lifeline for me. Not only what you taught and Gemma and Steph and everybody that's in there, but the friends that I've made and the connections that I've made. And I honestly don't know how I would have done it. I don't really know where I'd be without them, actually.
Wow, yeah.
Such good friends. I would have been so lonely.
Mm-hmm.
I have got amazing friends. I have one friend, the friend I stayed with in Madrid. I spoke to her all the time. So she was the one friend that was part of my recovery. But, it's really difficult. I found the whole friendship thing quite difficult, actually. So the people that I met and the support that I got from the program was just invaluable. And I think just keep believing that you can heal. You maybe just need to look at how you're doing life as well, type of thing. How you're showing up. And that's not why you're sick. I'm not saying that's why people are sick. I'm just saying it's not a quick fix, like you said, and you have to look at how you are interacting and communicating and doing life in order to heal, maybe.
Yeah, great.
And I'd say I'm still on that. I'm still I'm not quite where I want to be, but I'm getting there.
Great share. I think that's really, it's good. It's good wisdom to share, because it's just so easy to get swamped up and to not keep pressing forward. You kind of can't drive forwards if you're looking in the rearview mirror. Pretty hard.
Mm-hmm.
You got to keep your eyes on the front on. Thanks for jumping on, Tori. I really appreciate you sharing your story and your journey. And we'll see you back in CFS Health as a mentor soon as well, which is super exciting. So
yeah, we will.
It's going to be great.
Yeah, cool. Thank you so much, Toby.
Thanks, Tori. Speak to you soon. Bye for now.
Bye. Bye-bye.